Hey guys, the Bearded Beast of Duloc here. I was asked to do a comment on a video by Ice Cream Fitness on optimal training frequency. First off, I'd like to say I'm a big fan of Ice Cream Fitness YouTube channel, and I'm going to link it below in this video. If you haven't seen him, check him out, Jason Blaha. A little bit of background on me. I started training in the body part split era around 1986. All the Weider mags that I got, Flex and Muscle and Fitness, were big 5-day splits. Some of them even double splits, and a lot of the books in that era were kind of that same thing. I didn't really run into full body training. It wasn't on my radar screen at that time, and quite frankly, it wasn't on my radar screen until 2007. So my background, I initially, in 86 to 88, I built a lot of muscle using a body part split, but I also found during the time that the whole concept of bombing and blitzing and blasting my body parts with a high volume on a daily basis as a natural lifter just beat the living snot out of me. Even though I was young and full of testosterone. So around 2007, I started to do some research and really get into lifting on the internet, and started to form my own opinions and tinker with things. And, long story short, I am now a huge proponent of training frequency, training multiple times a week, training each body part multiple times per week. To be honest, I am a bodybuilder turned powerlifter, so the people I speak to are generally the guys during their first 2 or 3 years who aren't a bodybuilder or powerlifter per se. They're just trying to build up some muscle and a little bit of both, some muscle and some strength. So this is basically who I'm speaking to. For you guys, I'm a huge proponent of training frequency. I believe that guys should start 3 days a week, 2 to 3 days a week, 3 days a week in most cases, and get their reps in, not only so they can practice form, but also I believe rep work in the 5 to 12 rep range for most compound exercises is good for muscle building. But starting with these lifters 3 times a week, I don't like a huge amount of volume on each day. I'd rather see you train Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Maybe cycling your exercises depending on your experience level and depending on the intensity of your program, but that's for another video. But in any case, huge proponent of training frequency. I like to see guys start out 3 times a week, and then as they reach that 2 to 3 year period of time where they have experienced a good amount of strength gains and a good amount of muscle building gains, after this period of time when they understand their weaknesses a little bit better, then if they want to branch out into like an upper-lower split for powerlifting or even muscle building, I'm good with that. Sometimes as a natural, a little bit more recovery time would be good, especially with the intensity or increased weight. But that goes on a lifter by lifter basis. So that is my opinion. Jason talked about, I believe, protein synthesis and recovery times, and like after 48 hours, I believe it is, the muscle building process stops, and that's kind of why you train, every 2 days. And I back him with that. I'm no expert. I've read the research, and I prefer that you train that way than to go into the gym and try to do 279 sets for your biceps, kids. Trying to hammer out every body part into oblivion. I simply don't think that is the best way to train. I'm not just basing this on my opinion, but I work with a lot of younger lifters, and despite all the stuff being pushed out there in this industry with body part splits, I've seen a ton of younger lifters make amazing progress using training frequency. Not only that, but you have tons of great programs out there where guys are making great progress using training frequency. So it's definitely something that you should look into if you're currently on a split. It can be extremely painful to transition over into a body part split, or excuse me, it can be extremely painful, kids, to transition from a body part split to a full body workout because there are some pitfalls. When I first made the transition to a higher training frequency or full body workout, whatever you want to call it, I tried to do too many sets each day, and I tried to train every body part with too many sets, and it was just too much. It wasn't until the time where I started to take a more holistic view of training and train the whole body as a unit, and focus less on body parts and more on training the entire body, that I was able to successfully make that change. So for the last 3 years, I've been on my own experiment using training frequency. I started with 3 days a week. At one period of time, I developed a program where I wanted to experiment. I called it the Drunk Russian, where I trained 5 days a week. I did a squat exercise, a deadlift exercise, a bench exercise, overhead press exercise, and usually a speed or dynamic type exercise. But I only worked up to 1 set per day during that Drunk Russian period. It would go depending on how I felt that day. Like for bench, I might go in and do bench presses for a 10 rep set, or I might go in and do dumbbell bench presses for an 8 rep set, or I might go in and do close grip bench presses and work to a max single. Everything was how I felt that day. But the point being, I learned during that period of time, training 5 days a week, every lift, every movement pattern, that it could be done if the volume was right. So this evolved into me training with a very high frequency for powerlifting, 6 days a week, but it was basically an every other day type of deal. Like I would do squats and bench, and then deads and whatever, squats and bench, deads and whatever. There were variations and some heavy, light, medium rotations in there and whatnot, but we would train 2 weeks hardcore with the goal of overreaching and then deload the 3rd week because we were so spent. But bottom line is, Jason mentions in the comments, he knows, I know some serious powerlifters who squat 4 to 6 times a week who might chime in here. Kids, was one of them. I squat about 2 to 3 times a week right now, but I've squatted 4 or 5 times a week, at times, and it's definitely doable. The thing that I want to, I'm not necessarily directly addressing what Jason says in this video, but I want to address to you, if you're interested in it, is to focus on evolving your training. Getting into higher frequency training is an evolutionary process. You don't want to jump in with a lot of volume, in my opinion, and try to pull back the volume. In my opinion, you're better off starting slow and building a little bit. Whoops, lights out, kids on the computer. Building a little bit at a time. Like for squats, for example, I still only work up to a top set for the day, and then sometimes I'll do a back off set. But I don't do a lot of volume on a daily basis. So when you're building into frequency, don't try to do 1 billion sets per day. Start with a couple sets per group, and then maybe build up to 3. And then if over time, if you want to build into a higher frequency like what I was doing 6 days a week, you know, you're not doing crazy volume each day. You're doing a moderate amount of volume, and or a small amount of volume, but you know, you're not going there with the goal, the body part mentality that you're crushing every body part into oblivion. So, kids, this is running along, and I don't know if this is making sense to you, but once again, the question to me was, Dear Bearded Beast of Duloc, what do you think of training frequency? Kids, I think body part splits are, if you're natural or just like the average Joe who just wants some muscle, some strength, kids, you don't need elaborate body part splits. You just don't. Will you be successful on them? Sure. I've interviewed tons of natural bodybuilders for my job that do body part splits, and they're successful. Are they successful because of the splits? My honest opinion, no. Could they have, you know, refined their training and used a greater frequency? Yes. So guys, I hope this is helpful. I'd like to recommend some names for you on the topic for you to check out and research yourself. Don't just believe the hairy guy in the video, me. Go do your own research. Check out, I want you to Google Dr. Casey, but he has some great articles on the topic. I want you to look for John Christie, Real Muscle, Real Strength. It's a good book. John only had people training twice a week, but it was more of a full body approach. Of course, you have Mark Ripito and Bill Starr, and you know, you have the powerlifting community, which does a lot of upper lower type splits, and then you have you know, some of the Olympic guys who are training much more frequently, who I used to hate, kids, because I thought body part splits were the only way. So guys, please, if this video has been helpful, please share it on Facebook, websites, Tumblr, Twitter, whatever, Twatter, whatever it is. And if you have any questions or comments, leave them below. And thanks again for the pointing out this video. It was a great video. I enjoyed the video by Jason. And guys, thanks a lot, and I encourage you to please subscribe to the Bearded Beast of Duloc, kids. The Bearded Beast of Duloc, who likes ice cream fitness, kids.